Have you ever stood on the brink of a major breakthrough, career success within reach, a healthier lifestyle taking shape, or a relationship deepening into something meaningful, only to watch yourself tear it all down? Maybe you missed a deadline you swore you'd meet, pushed away someone who truly cared, let a hard-earned habit slip through your fingers, even as it was transforming your life. I know that feeling all too well. A few years ago, after a wake-up call from my doctor, I made a commitment to reclaim my health. For months, I was relentless, exercising daily, fueling my body with real nutrition, prioritizing rest. And the results? Unmistakable. My energy surged, my mood lifted. Even my medical tests proved I was on the right path. People noticed. They asked what had changed. But then, I started making exceptions. Skipping one workout turned into skipping 3. One small indulgence became a daily habit, and before I knew it, I had undone all my progress, slipping back into the very patterns that had jeopardized my health in the first place. And the worst part? It wasn't the first time. It was a cycle, one I couldn't understand. Why did I keep sabotaging myself when I had every reason to keep going? If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. Self-sabotage is maddeningly common, yet most of us don't recognize its true origins. We blame bad habits or weak willpower. But according to Carl Jung, one of the most profound minds in psychology, self-sabotage isn't a lack of discipline. It's a war within ourselves. Jung uncovered something unsettling. Our self-destructive behaviors aren't random acts of failure. They are driven by hidden forces in our unconscious mind, forces that paradoxically believe they are protecting us. Today we'll unravel these hidden mechanisms, why they exist, how they control us, and, most importantly, how we can break free. But before we explore Jung's insights into self-sabotage, we need to understand the man behind these groundbreaking ideas. Carl Gustav Jung, born in Switzerland in 1875, began as a close ally of Sigmund Freud. But while Freud fixated on repressed sexual urges, Jung took a broader, deeper approach. He uncovered the layers of the unconscious mind, distinguishing between our personal repressed experiences and a vast shared realm he called the collective unconscious, home to the universal symbols and patterns he named archetypes. His ideas didn't just revolutionize psychology, they shaped literature, cinema, and the way we see ourselves. If you've ever used words like introvert, extrovert, or complex, you're speaking Jung's language. But his most crucial insight into self-sabotage lies in his concept of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we repress, deny, or never fully develop. As Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. And that's the key. Self-sabotage isn't just bad luck or momentary weakness. It's a force within us, actively pulling us away from what we consciously want. The question is, why? And more importantly, how do we stop it? Self-sabotage wears many disguises in modern life. It's procrastination, the art of delaying what matters most, even when we know the cost. It's numbing ourselves with food, alcohol, social media, anything to escape, even if it slowly destroys us. It's pushing away love just as it's about to deepen, or playing small in our careers, avoiding risks, creating conflicts that keep us stuck. And the pattern is eerily predictable. Just when we're on the edge of a breakthrough, when success, change, or transformation is within reach, something inside us slams on the brakes. But why? Why would any part of us sabotage the very things we long for? Why do we repeatedly dismantle our own progress, our own happiness? Carl Jung uncovered a chilling truth. Self-sabotage isn't random. It comes from the shadow, the hidden vault of everything we've repressed, denied, or never allowed to flourish. From childhood, we are taught what is acceptable, what makes us worthy of love, approval, and belonging. Maybe you learned that expressing anger made you difficult, that being too ambitious was selfish, that showing vulnerability led to rejection. So, piece by piece, you buried parts of yourself. You shaped a persona, a carefully curated mask that showed the world only what was safe, what was allowed. But the parts you buried? They never disappeared. They festered in the dark, unseen but powerful, influencing your choices in ways you don't realize. Here's the part most people miss. The shadow doesn't just hold the parts of ourselves we fear, it also holds our most untapped potential. Our creativity, our strength, our deepest desires. And when we refuse to face it, it doesn't stay quiet. It erupts in self-sabotage, in destructive patterns we don't understand, in choices that feel like fate but are really just the unconscious screaming for recognition. Until we confront the shadow, it will continue to shape our lives from the depths. The question is, are you ready to face what's hidden? Imagine this. You've spent your life suppressing your anger, convincing yourself that it's ugly, dangerous, unacceptable. But buried emotions don't vanish. They mutate. Instead of expressing your frustration openly, you become passive-aggressive, lashing out in subtle, corrosive ways. Or you find yourself mysteriously drained around certain people, your energy sapped by the emotions you refuse to acknowledge. If you've buried your ambition, you might resent the success of others while sabotaging your own potential. If you've denied your need for connection, you might create chaos in relationships, starting fights, withdrawing, just when real intimacy is within reach. And it doesn't stop there. The parts of ourselves we disown don't just distort our actions, they shape how we see the world. We project our hidden wounds onto others, seeing in them what we refuse to see in ourselves. The person who irritates you the most? Chances are they mirror a part of you that you've tried to suppress. As Jung famously said, everything that irritates us about others can lead to an understanding of ourselves. But there's more. Buried within the shadow is another force, the wounded inner child, the part of you that still carries the pain of the past, trapped in unresolved moments of fear, rejection, or neglect. Jung recognized that childhood wounds don't simply fade, they form what he called complexes, deep emotional triggers that dictate how we respond to life. Consider repetition compulsion, a psychological phenomenon where we unconsciously recreate the very pain that once shattered us. But from a Jungian perspective, this isn't self-destruction. It's the psyche's desperate attempt to rewrite the past, to gain control over what once felt unbearable. If you were abandoned as a child, you might unknowingly push people away, not because you want to be alone, but because your unconscious mind is trying to relive the experience, this time with control over how it ends. If you had a critical father, you might develop a ruthless inner voice that sabotages your achievements before anyone else can. If your mother was emotionally distant, you might struggle to accept love, even when it's freely given. These patterns persist because, at one point, they protected us. They were survival strategies. But what once kept us safe is now keeping us small. And until we bring these hidden forces into the light, they will continue to shape our lives from the shadows. The child who learned to suppress their true emotions, to smile through pain, to stay quiet instead of speaking up, did so for a reason. It was survival, a necessary adaptation to an environment where authenticity felt unsafe. But here's the problem. Those same survival strategies don't disappear when we grow up. They linger, and over time, they don't protect us. They sabotage us. Jung captured this perfectly. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. But that choice, it requires something most people avoid. It requires us to face how the past still shapes the present. One of Jung's most radical insights was his view of the psyche as a self-regulating system, always striving for balance and wholeness. From this perspective, self-sabotage isn't just failure or dysfunction. It's purposeful. It has a message, even if we don't immediately understand it. Think of it this way. If one part of your personality takes over completely, another part will rise up to restore equilibrium. The workaholic who runs on ambition and achievement might suddenly feel an overwhelming urge to abandon everything, not out of laziness, but because their psyche is fighting back, demanding the balance they've denied themselves. Or consider this: self-sabotage sometimes emerges to keep the ego in check. If you become too consumed by success, by status, by a rigid sense of identity, your unconscious may throw obstacles in your path, not to punish you, but to humble you, to remind you that you are more than your achievements, that you are both light and shadow. And sometimes self-sabotage isn't destruction, it's an invitation to integrate the parts of yourself you've neglected. The person who has spent their entire life being the caretaker, the one everyone leans on, may suddenly find themselves burning out, snapping at others, or sabotaging their role, not because they don't care anymore, but because their psyche is demanding they step beyond the identity they've trapped themselves in. Jung had a name for this phenomenon: enantiodromia, the tendency of things to transform into their opposites when taken to extremes. The harder you repress something vital, the more violently it will surface. This changes everything. It means that self-sabotage isn't just something to fight against. It's something to listen to. It's not just an enemy, it's a message. The question is, are you willing to hear what it's trying to tell you? At the core of Jung's philosophy lies one of the most profound ideas in psychology, the process of individuation. A lifelong journey toward wholeness, toward the full integration of who we are meant to become. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Self-sabotage is often nothing more than resistance to this transformation. We say we want growth, we claim to seek change. Yet deep down, parts of us resist, because real transformation isn't just uncomfortable, it's terrifying. As Jung famously said, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. And this reveals a chilling paradox. We often fear becoming our true selves even more than we fear failure, because to truly grow, we must shed the skin of our old identity. Let go of relationships, habits, and self-concepts that, while limiting, have given us a sense of safety. The ego, our conscious sense of self, fights against this change, perceiving it as a kind of psychological death. And the greater the transformation, the stronger the resistance. Jung captured this perfectly. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. And that's exactly what self-sabotage often is, a desperate attempt to avoid that acceptance. Because stepping into our full power means taking responsibility. It means confronting the parts of ourselves we've spent a lifetime running from. As Jung put it, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. Yet at the same time, he reminds us, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. This war between our yearning for authenticity and our fear of what it demands from us is at the root of most self-destructive patterns. But awareness is the first step toward breaking free. So how do you uncover your own self-sabotage? Jung believed that the unconscious speaks through dreams, symbols, and hidden emotions. Recurring dreams, being chased, losing something important, or feeling unprepared, often reflect deep inner conflicts. Pay attention. Another powerful Jungian tool is active imagination, a technique where you visualize your self-sabotaging tendencies as a character. Give it a voice. Let it speak. What is it trying to protect you from? What does it fear will happen if it stops interfering? And finally, look for signs of projection, strong emotional reactions to others, repeating the same conflicts with different people, harshly judging traits in others that deep down you're rejecting in yourself. This work requires brutal honesty. But on the other side of that honesty, freedom. Take a hard look at your life. What patterns keep repeating? Where do things consistently fall apart? Is there a moment, right before success, right before connection, where everything suddenly goes wrong? Now dig deeper. What parts of yourself did you learn were unacceptable as a child? What qualities in others provoke the strongest reactions in you? These questions aren't random, they're a map, a way to trace the outlines of your shadow. Try exploring these journal prompts. When have I felt the deepest shame? What part of myself was I expressing? What traits in others trigger me the most, and why? What aspects of myself do I work hardest to suppress or hide? If people knew the real me, what do I fear they would reject? When and how do I sabotage myself most predictably? Jung's insight is simple but profound. What irritates us most in others is often a reflection of what we refuse to see in ourselves. Our strongest emotional reactions act as signposts, pointing straight to our disowned parts. But here's where most people get it wrong. The goal isn't to destroy the shadow, it's to integrate it. There's a crucial difference between repression and conscious containment. Repression shoves uncomfortable truths into the unconscious, where they fester and emerge in twisted, destructive ways. Conscious containment, on the other hand, acknowledges the shadow, but chooses how to express it. It turns unconscious chaos into controlled power. So, how do you do this? Dream analysis. Your dreams aren't just random. They reveal your unconscious in its purest form. Pay close attention to shadow figures, characters who provoke fear, anger, or unease. They often represent the disowned parts of you. Active imagination. Instead of suppressing your unconscious, engage with it. Through writing, art, or meditation, give your inner saboteur a voice. What does it want? What is it protecting you from? Symbolic understanding. Stop seeing self-sabotage as failure. Instead ask, what is this trying to tell me? What unmet need or suppressed part of yourself is screaming for attention? Creative expression. The shadow thrives in hidden corners. Bring it into the light. Whether through writing, painting, movement, find a way to channel what's buried inside into something tangible, something real. This isn't about fixing yourself, it's about knowing yourself, fully, completely, and without fear. Jung never saw the unconscious as something to be conquered or fixed. Instead, he believed in cultivating an ongoing dialogue, a lifelong exchange between our conscious self and the hidden forces beneath the surface. A conversation between ego and shadow, light and dark, that never truly ends. This is where most people misunderstand shadow work. It's not about erasing or destroying the parts of yourself you don't like. It's about understanding them, integrating them, and transforming their energy into something powerful. The aggression you once suppressed, it can become healthy assertiveness. The wildness you buried, it can be unleashed as raw creativity. The vulnerability you hid behind armor, it can turn into deep, authentic connection. Jung's insights didn't just shape psychology, they laid the foundation for many modern approaches to self-development. Internal Family Systems Therapy, IFS, pioneered by Richard Schwartz, mirrors Jung's understanding that the mind isn't a single, unified entity, but a system of parts, each with its own role, wounds, and purpose. Like Jung's shadow work, IFS teaches that healing doesn't come from eliminating parts of ourselves, but from building a relationship with them, learning why they exist and how they can be integrated. Other therapeutic models echo this same principle. Parts work, found in various healing modalities, follows Jung's core insight. Wholeness is achieved not by rejecting aspects of ourselves, but by bringing them into the light. Modern shadow work has expanded on Jung's ideas, making them more accessible. Thinkers like Robert Johnson and Debbie Ford have developed practical techniques for identifying and reclaiming disowned aspects of the self in everyday life. And here's where it gets even more fascinating. Science is beginning to catch up with Jung's intuition. Research on implicit bias, the adaptive unconscious, and even neuroplasticity aligns with his understanding of how deep psychological patterns form and, more importantly, how they can be rewired. The transformation process is strikingly similar across countless case studies. 1. Awareness, recognizing the self-sabotaging pattern. 2. Origins, understanding where it comes from. 3. Compassion, seeing its original protective purpose. 4. Integration, developing a new conscious way of meeting the underlying need. The truth is, your shadow wants to be seen. It doesn't sabotage you out of malice. It does so because it has never known another way. The question is, are you ready to listen? At the heart of Jung's philosophy lies a radical idea, holding the tension of opposites. The ability to sit with contradiction, to feel the pull of conflicting forces within us, without rushing to suppress or resolve them. Jung believed true psychological growth doesn't come from choosing one side of ourselves over the other, but from embracing paradox, to be both strong and vulnerable, ambitious and compassionate, independent and deeply connected. This inner struggle, this resistance, isn't a flaw, it's the birthplace of transformation. From this tension, something entirely new can emerge. Jung called it the transcendent function, not a compromise, not a middle ground, but a breakthrough. A new way of being that includes and transforms both opposing forces. This is why quick fixes fail, why trying to simply erase unwanted patterns without understanding why they exist only ensures they return in another form. The very struggles we fight against often contain the key to our wholeness. The traits we reject, they hold untapped energy, wisdom, and power. As Jung wrote, the attainment of wholeness requires one to stake one's whole being. Nothing less will do. This is the essence of the hero's journey, the universal pattern of growth found in myths across cultures. The path is never about destroying the shadow, but about facing it, understanding it, and integrating its power. The hero doesn't defeat the darkness within, they transform it. This is individuation, the lifelong process of becoming whole. It doesn't mean achieving perfect harmony. It doesn't mean eliminating conflict. It means learning to hold all parts of yourself, to navigate life not just with conscious intention, but with the deeper wisdom of the unconscious. And that changes everything. In Jung's vision, psychological maturity isn't about perfection. It's about integration. It's the ability to hold our contradictions, to embrace our complexity, to move through life with an awareness of both our light and our shadow. So as you reflect on your own patterns of self-sabotage, don't just see them as problems to be fixed. See them as invitations to deeper self-awareness, to a fuller understanding of who you are beneath the surface. Ask yourself, what might these patterns be trying to protect? What hidden part of me is fighting to be acknowledged? What truth have I been avoiding? Because this work demands courage. The courage to look at yourself honestly, to confront what you've denied, to claim the parts of yourself you've long abandoned. As Jung wrote, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. Throughout this journey, we've uncovered how self-sabotage isn't just a matter of willpower or bad habits. It runs deeper. It's woven into the fabric of the unconscious, born from disowned shadow aspects, unresolved wounds, and the psyche's relentless drive for balance. And as we've seen, the path forward isn't about erasing these hidden forces, but about integrating them, turning self-sabotage into self-awareness, fear into power, fragmentation into wholeness. Now, I want to hear from you. What patterns have played out in your own life? Where have you seen the shadow at work? And what part of this exploration resonated with you most? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to continue this conversation with you. If you're eager to go deeper, I recommend starting with Man and His Symbols by Carl Jung or Owning Your Own Shadow by Robert Johnson. Both offer powerful insights into this inner work. And if this video brought you value, consider liking, subscribing, and sharing it with someone who might need it. Your support helps bring more content like this to life. Until next time, remember Jung's words, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become."